Morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Wow, this feels so new. FPL is back. We don't have Zoff and Bucker with us. Zoff's been spending like hours in the gym, and he might have promised a shirtless pod at some point this season. Speaking of shirtless, Bucker's busy with some extracurricular activities. So I have a few good men here with me for some company to chat some FPL. First up, I have with me Danny, a good friend of mine who I talk FPL to very, very, very regularly. How's it going, Danny?
Good, thank you, mate. Very good. Nice to be back. Thought I'd get the old Christmas tree in the background and give it a bit of a old school fantasy football scout feel. Nice to see you both.
Likewise. And I have with me Baker from the Above Average FPL Pod. You did one day or two ago, got the FPL juices flowing. How are you feeling, Baker?
Yeah, good. Feels like it's starting to get the brain back in gear. We as I said, we put it the other night, and it was like God, there's a lot to think about. Like I've been dabbling a bit in the World Cup fantasy, but like no thoughts whatsoever. Then when you look at this, you're like, oh, it's intense. We're back in.
How do you guys feel about the game on Saturday? I want to ask you up front that. Both England fans?
I don't think about it. It's pretty scary at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, we're a good team. We've got a fair chance. I'm pretty scared of Mbappe, but we don't really get our hopes up, do we? We're ready to lose, but we're also quietly optimistic, I think.
I don't think
that,
England fans are quietly optimistic. There's such I'm a neutral, right? And there's such a wide variety of people, of English fans on Twitter when it comes to England football. There are the kinds like you or Andy, let's talk FPL, completely downplay absolutely everything, and then there's somebody else, this one good pass and everybody's like, we're going to win the World Cup, and there's everybody in between the spectrum. And I think it's because of fears of some disappointment and getting ahead of yourself, etc. as well. But it's fun to watch as a neutral. How do you feel about the game though, Baker?
Yeah, I'm in that probably really positive mood where I just like assume we're going to win everything and we're going to win it all and it's going to be okay, but it's, you can only talk about your own team, and in your own country type things. But the idea of the sort of like four guys along the wings that we've got at the moment, it's so, like, I know we're going to say about Mbappe, but it's so hard to think that you can keep out Foden, Saka, Grealish, Rashford, like incredible talents, even without Sterling. And then we don't know if he's back or not. Then Kane, obviously, like I don't even know how I'd react if Kane was the person that lifted the World Cup. Like I would be an absolute blubbering mess. That would be literally starting to feel a bit of tears. The thought of saying that Kane might lift a World Cup, man, that would be special. That's my only thing with watching the World Cup, because he gets so much stick, Kane, that it's just, you feel so protective of the man, so protective of him. So yeah, but I think I'm confident.
I feel like if you're an outsider, I'm trying to look at it objectively, and if I'm looking at it objectively, I can't see how we can't say that England probably edge it as the squad and as a team. So, but then you, as an England fan, you think, well, we don't win anything. So how are we going to win it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Also, I want to see some Harry Maguire redemption. That'd be nice, as well as Kane.
You two must be really pleased with the World Cup, though, Man United fans.
Yeah,
but your boys have been great.
It's sort of deja vu though, because our boys were great the last World Cup as well, and it didn't translate into results on the pitch. I mean, Pogba won the World Cup, and I think a fair few got deep into the World Cup, and not much happened then. And also from a very selfish point of view, like, okay, a few of you should come back home now, train with Tenak. It's what I want to happen, from a very selfish point of view. So yeah, great that they're in good nick. I think it does a good job for their confidence, but you want some of the main guys back now.
I like that, both for club and for FPL, that we are ticking off numbers as well. We are like, yep, that's another few back early. Like my first reaction when Son set up that late goal for Korea wasn't, oh, good. Mine was like, oh, I kind of like a few days rest first, a few extra days rest than what he got. So I think we are starting to turn our brains back in that way, where people who are going out, we're thinking, that's good. That's good. Lock up, get yourself a bit more rest, get a bit more rest in. So let's turn our brains back to FPL, mate.
Yeah, speaking about that, we're looking to dive deep, maybe have sort of like a macro chat. There are a few points that we wanted to discuss. Before we get into that, I'll just quickly get done with the sponsor plugs and then we'll dive right into it.
All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below.
Right. And if you aren't already, a Patreon or a YouTube member for the FPL Wire, we have a Discord setup where I think it's going to be pretty active in the next 2 or 3 weeks because everybody's going to start getting out of snooze mode, get out of hibernation, and we're going to start constructing our thoughts and our drafts, etc. as well. So I think right now is as good a time as any to join us. So get in there. All you need to do is become a member on Patreon or Discord. All of our content remains free anyway. And yeah, that's about it. Let's get right into it then, boys. What do you want to talk about first? I think maybe we address the premiums, or do you want to talk about the doubles? Where do you want to start?
Premiums.
Players.
Yes, players. All right, that's where we want to go. Just worth highlighting that those of you who have been in full FPL hibernation mode, we do have a few double game weeks happening now. And just in case you weren't aware, we have a Chelsea double game week in game week 19 where they play City at home and Fulham away. And Fulham have a double as well where they play Leicester away and Chelsea at home. There's also a likely double game week in game week 20. It depends on whether there's a replay between Manchester City and Chelsea of the FA Cup. And if there is no replay, there is a double game week for Man City in game week 20 where they play United away and Spurs at home. And they also have a confirmed double game week in game week 23 where they play Aston Villa at home and Arsenal away. Spurs have a double in 20 where they play Arsenal at home and City away. And Arsenal have a double in game week 23 where they play Brentford and City at home. So yeah, double game weeks for City in 20 and 23. The 20th game week double game week is not a confirmed one yet. But yeah, a lot to pack into. And I mentioned that before we get into the premium chat because, we'd be thinking about Salah and Haaland who've been, enjoying Christmas, taking it easy at home, ready to dive into Premier League football, while a lot of their other premium counterparts are competing in the World Cup. But City have two doubles in 20 and 23. So we do need to talk about Kevin De Bruyne, who's back home as well. Where are you guys at with those players? I'll come to you first, Danny.
I mean, Kevin De Bruyne, is probably someone that I might need some persuasion on by you guys today because I know that you like him a lot, and he's not really entered my thinking yet. Obviously, I've been trying to get my brain back in FPL mode the last few days, and I sort of start. I always do this, but it's a bit like pre-season. I start that process by basically just getting the app open and having to play around with some players and trying to create a squad. So you just sort of budget-wise, I'm not on the side of three premiums at the moment. And the short story at the moment for me is that I prefer Salah to De Bruyne. I generally do anyway. So, and then also my kind of initial thought was, why have De Bruyne when you've got Foden? The only thing with that is I am moving away a little bit from that kind of general perspective now, just because obviously we'll get a better idea with Foden and his availability. I'm not really, I'm sure we'll talk about rest and stuff. I'm not massively buying into the idea of rest, etc. Although obviously it depends on, how far he goes in. But with the fixtures being quite close together, that does obviously give De Bruyne a bit of an advantage over Foden, even though Foden recovers so well. I don't expect De Bruyne to get rested on any of these matches. I wouldn't go into any of these matches expecting De Bruyne to miss out on any. So that does give him an advantage over Foden. And then he has scored so well for so long, Kevin. So potentially I've got a bit of a blind spot and I'm missing something here in my head. At the moment, for me, it's Salah, and then it's Haaland, and it's probably not another premium. And if it was another premium, it'd probably be Kane over De Bruyne. So that's where I am on De Bruyne.
Mika, you share the same thoughts?
When you talk about those double game weeks, I'm like, right, okay, there's only... My initial thought was that there's only one premium that's got double game weeks, and you're like, well, no, actually, there's two, isn't there, at City? And it's like, that does make me think a little bit more about De Bruyne. I can't help but when I watch De Bruyne play, think that it's all about assists now, and that doesn't lean me as much to him like I used to. Like so often last season, you'd see him really press as that forward, like be the first presser of the ball, and doesn't do that anymore. Often he's quite a lot out towards the right, a lot more than he was previously. All those key passes, and I'm like, the Foden thing probably confuses me a little, and then I'm like, but maybe I'm thinking different. Maybe I should treat them separately. Maybe I should think about, do you not just want all three of the forwards? In terms of De Bruyne, Foden, and Haaland. I think my brain says to me that I only have Foden or Haaland, but Foden or De Bruyne. But maybe I should think differently in that way. I think De Bruyne's a lot safer for rotation going forward, because Bernardo's been talking a lot about how he likes to play alongside the other holding midfielder. So it feels to me like he wants to play more of that central role. Gundo, just legs wise, how many can he play and do? You feel like Kev plays. You do feel like Kev plays every game.
I feel like I would have felt better about Foden if he wasn't starting England games, not because of a rest thing, but just because of the you get that players who haven't been picked for the national team are back into the kind of warm embrace of the club manager who loves them, who wants to show what they can do after not being picked, and such, etc., etc. And now that he is playing, obviously that's one thing, but also, to be honest, with Foden, it does increase his chances of just going out and partying with Jack and doing whatever he's going to do. And if he does that once, Foden, obviously at the moment, I think he will play.
Yeah,
I think he'll play the first game and the game after, and probably the game after. But there is a significant chance that he does go. He likes to go out. He does. This is what's happening. I think we're still being a bit naive to it. I think the thing that happened last time with Foden when he got dropped for a period of time. With Pep, it's not just like, oh, Foden goes out for a night out and then okay, punishment is a game or two. I think it's more like, if Foden's doing that kind of thing, he's not showing the commitment that Pep wants to see. And so Pep will just say, you're going to sit out for a while now until I feel like you're actually demonstrating over a period of time that you are going to change, kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, if Foden misses a game, he could miss the next 4 or 5. You just don't know. So he is a significant min's risk. And then the other thing is, I think I almost would have felt a bit better if City were playing on Boxing Day with Foden, because at least he's going to be at home the night before and kind of with the family. But they play 2 days after Boxing Day, I think. So,
yeah.
The thing with De Bruyne, though, like, he's not shooting. That we can see as much as that. He's done 2.5 XG all season. That's not a lot for. It's not a lot for a premium, but you shouldn't discount that X. So his expected assists so far this season is 6.8. Okay. You wouldn't be a surprise to guess that Trippier is next. 4.4. That's big. The third place one is your boy Bruno on 3. So he's more than double the XA.
Supplying to one of the best finishers in the league. And so the delta positive on XA for De Bruyne and XG for Haaland is really good, because world-class passer, world-class finisher. So it's not like you can discount that. And there is also, like when you're comparing to De Bruyne of last season, City have shifted gears in terms of how they're playing. There's no longer murder ball. They're going for 3, 4, 5 goals every game. So it's something you take into account. And first question is like, if I am going for De Bruyne, I don't think it's going to be in a 2 premium setup. I think Haaland stays in. I think Mo Salah stays in. And then I get De Bruyne in addition to these 2. And, it's maybe a sort of compromise that I make in my mind where I have this because there's 2 extra games to play for as well. But I'm with you. I think if there is a negative result for the English boys on Saturday, I'd be more likely to throw Phil Foden into my team and go with a 2 premium setup, because I don't think it's that much of the only thing I think that we need to look into is a point that a good friend of ours, Johnny Pringle, made to me when he spoke about why Foden was dropped or not playing in the Leicester game, is that Pep is massively worried about teams that counter. And that's something we need to keep in our mind as FPL managers, because he doesn't play versus Leicester, and Bernardo Silva plays on one of the wing positions against these heavy countering teams. And maybe that's something we look at from a matchup point of view. But whenever I'm watching City play, Foden is the second striker in that team. His job is to place himself in the center of the box in case there is a couple of defenders marking Haaland, which they are, and he's open for the goal. And he's an excellent finisher. His delta positive on finishing ability is great. So I'm with you on that. If I'm going for De Bruyne, I think it'll be as my third premium, not my second, because let's talk about Mo Salah, because I think this is a good diversion into Salah. And I was looking into Salah and thinking about him because clearly in the last 6 or 7 game weeks before we shut in game week 16, Salah was central. Salah was shooting a lot more. I looked at the data as well. The first 7, 8, 9, 10 game weeks, he was approximately 0.4 xG per 90. The last 6, 7, he was 0.6 xG per 90. So, and it was visible. He was central to goal. But now there are 2 factors that are responsible for that. They only had Darwin, Firmino, and Salah as their strikers. And Diaz and Jota were unfit. So they either played a 4-2-2-2, where they had Elliott on the right side and Carvalho on the left, and Darwin and Salah were occupying the central roles, or they're playing a 4-3-3 with Firmino as the central striker in a facilitating role, and Darwin and Salah were the 2 strikers. Now, this changes massively if Jota is fit, because I think Jota is good to go central in that Liverpool team. But what news we have today is Jota is coming only in February. But Luis Diaz is fit. And I don't think that pushes... I'm not worried about Salah's expected minutes at all. But what that does make me think about is if Diaz, Nunez, and Salah are starting together, I don't know if Salah's going to be as central as he was towards the end of the season. What do you think about that?
I'm now getting flashed, but I owned Luis Diaz until he got injured every game, and he was brilliant for me. And watching him as an asset was like, why am I owning Mo? Because he just greedy. Like Diaz, I don't think he's done a key pass all season. Like literally, it doesn't pass to Mo. He's not had no interest in it whatsoever. And I'm like, hold on, Jota's not fit. Diaz comes back in as the left. Darwin goes up top. Salah goes right. Like I don't know. For me, it feels like it just makes so much sense to go Mo because he's not been playing and he's got this fully rested Mo. But I can't forget the fact that I don't see it that much. I don't see me capping him after, like, no chance I see me capping him between 18 and 23. No chance. There's no fixture I look out there and go, yeah, I'm capping them.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. Sorry, go on.
Go on, Danny. I was just looking at the fixtures.
No, I agree with the point about captaining, but I suppose he's there. You know, you never know if something's going to happen to Haaland, do you? But I guess if you are arguing between KDB and Salah, but the point of Salah is but also is a potential, you know, is an option as a captain if something does happen to Haaland. But yeah, I agree. I'd be a bit surprised if Salah doesn't play up top. Like Elliott looks really good on the right for one, and he's a really good player, and he's the future, and he's had a lot of minutes this season. It seems to me like he favours that 4-2-4 kind of formation. Again, we're speculating, but I just if I had to bet on it, my gut feeling was if Diaz was fit, which is another question. He's not necessarily match fit. He's not necessarily going to play the first couple of games. I don't know how fit he actually is, but Diaz on the left, Elliott on the right, and Darwin and Salah up front. They look like a good partnership, Darwin and Salah up front.
Yeah.
But again, it's like a start of the season thing, isn't it? It's Salah. Is there enough evidence for you to not start with him? You know, start with him and move off him. The other bonus with Salah is the highest price. So you can move to De Bruyne, you can move to anyone. It gives you that flexibility.
Yeah.
And there is reason to even pick a Kane ahead of Salah at the moment because one extra game potentially. Like, that's something you keep in mind, or what do you think? Because Haaland is non-negotiable. I think all three of us agree on that. So,
yeah.
How do you?
I think what Danny said there is you talking earlier about having KDB and Salah. I can't see me going that way. I think I would prefer to if I think Salah's going to play up front, I probably do start with Salah and not KDB. With the thing that I could pivot if it looks like it doesn't work out. Like if we think Salah's going to play up top, how did like rested Salah playing up top? changes everything.
And it's
You know,
not
and that's
even
where
up
the
top.
information.
It's about his role, where even if it's a 4-3-3, there was a period maybe towards the first 8-10 game weeks this week. Klopp's mentioned it in his press conferences as well, where he was wider in a more creative role. So when I mentioned that his non-PXG per 90 has gone up from 0.40 to 0.60, his creative numbers have gone down as well. So there's a clear shift in role. So it's about whether Klopp maybe shifts his role. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'd be worried about his role as the goal scorer if Jota was fit, but not if Diaz is fit. That's where I am. So I think start with more.
Yeah, I think that performance against City when Salah was up front, that's got to have been a big message to Klopp. That was one of the best performances I've ever seen from Salah. He tore Man City apart on his own. But yeah, I'm just looking at the fixtures, and I don't really like. I'm not one for planning the moves, and I don't intend to plan moves. But it's the double City's double and followed by Wolves at home. So it's if you really do want to get on De Bruyne, it's potentially a move there if you've got 2 free transfers to do Salah to De Bruyne for the double and then Wolves at home. And when he's got Wolves at home, Salah's got Chelsea.
But then the first 2 fixtures are Leeds away and Everton at home. That's the thing. There are points there.
Yeah, Leeds away is that's what's worrying me at the moment. If I'm not going to go with Foden or De Bruyne.
Yeah, I think you need to make your bed with City game week 17. Like you just. Unless it's something like you want to go with Phil Foden and hence you're going a little later. But how do you not go with 3 City for Leeds and Everton? It's worth noting, though, that the Leeds game is on a Wednesday and the Everton game is on a Saturday and there's a 2.5-day turnaround. So we will see some rotation. That's why we're talking about De Bruyne, because he's the least likely to probably be rotated in this period. So, yeah.
The other thing is we can't ignore as well is, when we're talking about De Bruyne, especially if it's in a 3-meme or whatever, it's inextricably linked to people like Darwin, and who if you've got any 3-meme, you're not going to have Darwin. So yeah, I mean, and if you say let's, I know it's we don't want to sort of mix it up too much, but if you say you didn't go Darwin, say you went someone like Nketiah, nearly an extra 3 million, then you could potentially have De Bruyne instead of Foden.
Yeah. Cool.
Darwin's part of the conversation, I think.
Yeah, but Darwin's expected minutes go down slightly with Diaz's fitness, in my opinion, because Firmino showed enough in the last 8 game weeks to say that I'm here to at least be rotated. I'm here not to be ignored. I can still finish. I can facilitate Salah and Darwin playing together. So I'm not as confident. I'm much more comfortable going with the Darwin when Diaz isn't fit. Now I don't know. It's a little bit of a grey area.
Yeah. So it could get swayed, can we, by that EFL game?
One thing we don't really know about Darwin, unless I've missed something, and I wish we had that information, is we don't really know how he copes with quick turnarounds, what his injury record's like, what his muscles are like. You know what I mean? So with some players, you can feel comfortable that if they're first choice, they'll still play 3 games in a week. And I think Darwin is first choice. I just don't see how he couldn't be. He's awesome. He's 100 million quid, and he's the future for Liverpool. I'd be confident that he's first choice. And he can still do damage off the bench, but I don't know what it looks like for him if he's playing, say, 3 games in 7 days. That's the problem in terms of his expected minutes.
And that leaves us with Harry Kane to talk about when it comes to the premiums. Now, I was very Kane curious, and no offense to you, Baker, but Spurs haven't been that great in attack so far this season, and Kane's been shithousing goals on set pieces primarily. And we were having a little chat before we got on here, and I was like, I have an inkling that 50 or greater percentage of the goals Kane scored have been from set pieces. I don't know how much he scored from open play goals, and did a little bit of magic on your phone, and you told me that 6 out of 12 goals that he scored come from set pieces, 2 pens and 4 from corners. But I'm like, a large chunk of this period was without Kulusevski. And in my head, Spurs sing when Kulu is fit. Like, I think he's the guy that adds balance to your team, that makes Spurs capable of scoring 2, 3, 4 goals. And if that doesn't happen, I think Spurs good for 2 goals, and I don't know if they'll score 3. That's how I think about that. So, and with Perisic's delivery, Kane's floor has gone higher because He's good for goals and pens. He's good for goals from set pieces. Spurs have gotten really good for set pieces. Now Spurs are singing in open play. He's got a higher ceiling. That's how I feel about Spurs at the moment. And Kane, where are you with that?
Yeah, I am. Look, I'm always a sucker for Kane. I think there is similar thing to what Salah. We're not capping him anytime soon. So that does weigh into my thinking a little bit more on him. We've only really got one striker spot. We talked beforehand, but chances are, especially with that double, Mitro and Haaland are locked, and therefore it's that one spot. So Darwin and Kane are probably playing for a spot there. You get with Kane. You really do. What we don't know is, look, Richarlison, you can see it, the main man for Brazil. The main man, like the number 9 for Brazil and looking like the number 9 for Brazil. He's not going to come back and just be on the bench. What we don't know, at the moment, I think it's a really easy decision. Son looks so uncomfortable with the mask. He's adjusting it every 2 minutes. He's not right. The more rest you can give him, the better. The ideal world is Kane, Richarlison and Kulu. Fantastic. But if Son's okay, by the time we come back, you start getting into a place where, and England make the World Cup final, which we will, and Kane will lift the trophy, then maybe he does miss a few minutes. So I think that's a much later down the line decision with Kane. But what you do know when you get from him, he just gets points. Just continually gets points. Kulusevski's back. Bentancur might miss that Christmas period. That's definitely one to look at. I saw a report yesterday that he might be back before Christmas and be okay. So I think Paul O'Keefe said 3 to 4 weeks, abductor injury. Bentancur is a big deal for us in that central midfield. So if there's no Bentancur, like that's a lot of our transition out of midfield. There's Bentancur and Kulusevski on the same pitch, the way that they've been playing so this season. Kane's a great asset.
So it'll be Bissouma and Hobart in midfield?
You'd expect so.
All right.
You'd expect so, 3-4-3 and those two. But it's not quite the same. Not quite the same as Bentancur, who's really stepped up this season.
I'm just looking at the fixtures here out of the blocks. City, Leeds, Everton, Chelsea. Spurs have got Brentford, Villa, and Palace. You sort of prepare De Bruyne if you're looking at the third premium, right? Just fixtures alone.
Tottenham's fixtures get tough after those 3. Like, those are the good fixtures. So Conte will want everyone, but he will be all over 9 points from those fixtures, because after that we've got a home game. We've got City twice. We've got home games against Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham across January, February. There's loads of big games. And he'll just want to get those points in the bag if he can do against those 3, because they're all winnable games. They're not easy, but they're winnable games. And so I think that's where it goes for it. Look, Kane is Kane, mate. He scores goals. He gets getting bonus.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for us to make a case for him, though. He is competing against Salah and De Bruyne. Like, that's the reality of it. Cool. I mean, I as far as I understand, I think, Danny, you're on Salah and Haaland and maybe flirting with De Bruyne, and that's where I am. Where are you on Salah, Baker? Right? Because you were thinking about Darwin, is what I know. So I don't know where you are at the moment. And it's 7th of December, till 20 days from.
I'm not locked on Salah.
You're not locked on
I'm
Salah.
definitely not locked on Salah at all. Haaland obviously is just nailed. I suspect it's one more. A lot of it will depend for me on what we think on the minutes on Darwin as we get closer. If Darwin's playing, I doubt I'll have Salah.
Fair enough. Yeah, I could be persuaded if that's the case, and if there are strong indications that way also. Cool. Before we progress further, I think we'll probably move into either Chelsea or Arsenal, or talk about the London clubs. But If you guys are watching the stream, make sure you're hitting the like and subscribe button. It really, really helps us. We've got a decent crowd, I think, so far. We've got around 160 people watching us at the moment, more than I expected. So yeah, make sure you're hitting like and subscribe. And this one's for you, Adam. Premium. He hates that word. He hates everything mium.
Hates
So
that
I
word.
think we should keep
What-
mentioning that throughout the pod.
One last premium. What about Bruno?
And I think that's a Man United conversation, but let's talk about Man United then, because thing is, he's a good asset, but I prefer Rashford and Anthony and Martial at their price points. I feel like you're getting somebody who might be similar in output for 2.5 million to 3.5 million cheaper. That's where I mean. There's a little bit of a dynamic shift. Where are United at the moment? And I think Danny will add to this as well. Is we're probably getting another striker or an attacking player in January, is what I'm hearing. Outside of that, I'm expecting Martial to be first choice in the striker position. I'm expecting Rashford to be first choice in the left wing position, and I'm expecting Anthony to be the first choice when it comes to right wing. Sancho is currently out of the picture because he's not even training with the team, and he's been training with coaches recommended by Ten Hag, and he's been doing individual work. So I think there's something happening there with the fitness. So he's not a worry at the moment. And the real wild card in this is Garnacho. And how his trajectory goes puts Rashford, or I don't see Rashford's expected minutes at risk anyway, but it puts Rashford or Martial's expected minutes at risk, depending on what his trajectory is like. And if he's fine and if Ten Hag wants to continue with Rashford and Martial, and he wants to throw Garnacho, and I don't know if Garnacho can play on the right. I don't know if right wing is Rashford's best position. So that's a little bit of cloud thing. Now, Bruno's nailed down as an 8, but I just think I'm comfortable going with Rashford, Anthony, or Martial at 6 or 7 million. Because they're going to offer similar, if not more, output. Is where I am. What do you think, Danny?
Yeah, I agree, basically. I'm struggling to sort of, again, just like looking at drafts initially, I'm struggling to justify how I can go without Rashford from the start. I've said it so many times, but his ceiling is as high as anyone's. Borderline in the league, honestly. And obviously like Haaland aside and Salah, etc. He's a frustrating player because you just never know. I owned him a lot before Christmas, and he always looked good to me. But he can go through a game and not do anything. But he can go through a game and score a hat trick easily. He's got a ridiculous ceiling, and he's got Forest at home and Bournemouth at home in the first 3. He's 6.7 million or whatever he is. He's got the kind of almost ideal mix of he's not first choice for England at the moment. I don't think he will be the way things are going. So he is going to come home to this manager who he loves and who loves him, and he's just looks super fit and super sharp. But he's also scoring goals and like building his confidence. And yeah, like Garnacho just looks unreal. He's really shocked me. I can't actually believe how good he looks, and hopefully it continues. But I think that even if he works his way into the team, he'll just move Rashford. I think he'd rest Anthony even ahead of Rashford, even though Anthony's a natural right-sided player, and Rashford arguably isn't. Again, Martial's fitness is so untrustworthy that A, I wouldn't go there, but B, if and when, it's not even if he gets injured, it's when he gets injured. That's probably Rashford up front then as well, which increases Rashford's minutes.
Yeah.
Literally see the pain in Pranel's face as you were saying.
It's an FPL pet peeve of mine. I'll come to that once Danny's done talking.
Yeah, obviously, if Martial's fully fit, it's not like I'm going to look at him and go, I'm never picking this guy because he always gets injured. But I mean, I literally don't think I've ever seen a more injury-prone player than Martial. I don't even know what muscles he has in his body that just seem to his back goes every single game after 20 minutes. And he's so good. It's so frustrating as a United fan because I can't believe how good he is as well in that number 9. But anyway, that aside, there's too many good strikers. So I'm not considering him. And yeah, like Bruno is great, looks great, good option. But the price is so important at the moment, and I just think Rashford offers too much at that price.
Yeah,
I need to be convinced out of not having Rashford because he's in at the moment.
Same. Like when I was writing notes to myself during this break, when I was watching Match of the Day, right when Game Week 16 was over, and noting down my thoughts. This is what I told myself. Rashford is the pick. Put him in. Because his ceiling is incredibly high. And with the way the England players, etc. are talking about, he's the definition of a confidence player. And right now that confidence is sky high. Like you say, his ceiling is equal to anybody in this league, especially if United start singing. So yeah, I'm with you. I prefer him to Martial as a pick. But what I was talking about when it comes to injury-prone players is we're not playing a draft. So many times people don't play injury-prone players. And I think a lot of us have learned tough lessons when it comes to missing out on Danny Ings when he's good or Christian Pulisic when he's good. Is they're not injured until they're injured. And if they're injured, when they're injured, you can transfer them out. Until then, just look at them for the pick that they are. And if they get injured, you have transfers. That's how I generally feel about injury-prone players with high upside, where I'm like, I shouldn't worry about that too much because if they get injured, I'll just transfer them out.
I agree, but it's just obviously with Martial, there are so many other good picks. There are so many good strikers, and then you've got Rashford. So
it's 3 games. It's 3 games straight out in a week. Madness for me.
Yeah,
to start that way. But what is it? Forest, Wolves, Bournemouth. First 3 games. So 3 of the worst attacks in the league. Literally, hold on, I'll get you it. So Bournemouth, 120 minutes per XG for Bournemouth, 94 minutes per XG for Wolves, 93 minutes per XG for Forest. So none of them are expected to score a goal within 90 minutes. We have to have Dalot, don't we? Do we have to have Dalot?
We have to have Dalot.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. How do we not have Dalot? I mean, this is what we're going to keep saying all the way through tonight. Is how do we not have X player? But I mean, yeah,
he's on 0 yellow cards. It helps.
Right, you have to have Dalot.
Yeah.
Just the more I just look at those 3, he's got 3 games in a row of teams that average 1 XG more than every 90 minutes.
And for
more.
And the thing is at the moment Dalot's getting a clean sheet and a half every time he gets a clean sheet.
Exactly that.
I mean, Fernando Santos thinks he's better than Cancelo. So I mean, who are we to argue? Yeah. Yeah. And there is a little bit of a semi-bluff element in this because I was looking at Ben Crellin's tweets and he was very surprised that United didn't have a double game week in 21. Similarly, because United have the tightest fixture crunch going down the future. So if there is some sort of news that crops up, because if we go through in Europe and if we go through in the FA Cup and if we go through in the Carabao Cup, then they need to make us play our game somewhere. So there is a slight, I'd say under 5%, 10% chance that we have a double game week 21. But it's sort of like a semi-bluff because you have good fixtures and you're putting yourself in a position to get lucky by going strong on United anyway. So I have no cons because there is that factor to mention as well.
When let me just ask a very macro question here because we tell everyone not to make transfers on the game, don't we? To be in that position, but you get quite tempted. Like we have this conversation here, and it's like Dalot, and Dalot's not in my team to just press the button and just put him in, and then once they're in, they're harder to get out. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like this thing where because he's not in my team, I'm like he could definitely slip through the net because I haven't actually pressed a button on him. Like, are these transfers actually worthwhile us saving? Like, is that actually going to make a difference at the end of the season?
It depends how high your rank is, I suppose, doesn't it? Because I'm a bit of like a perfectionist, so I can't stand the idea of like just giving away. Like, you know what I mean? If we are gonna finish in and around the top 10k, which is obviously a challenge, then it's every transfer is possibly a few hundred places around there. And I'm already a bit annoyed that like I made like 4 transfers or something on the last day before the prices, and I was like I'd been out drinking all day, and I can't remember what I did, but it wasn't great. You know what I mean? I know that I brought in Greenwood because I had this idea that we're all going to go 3-5-2, and it's like no, we're not going to go 3-5-2.
Yeah, we're not going to go 3-5-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't thinking, and you just want to get done with it so that you could switch off FPL for a while.
It was your fault. Actually, it was yours. You sent us a list of things that might change. It's actually your fault.
It's my fault. But it is something you don't do because Baker. I know this will irritate you, but I finished like 1042 last season, and if I had 1 point more, I had a triple-digit rank, and that plays on my mind. I'm not clicking on any buttons no more. Go to Pete's FPL.team. Click on buttons there, but don't do anything
Okay.
else. Because
Okay.
if you're missing out by a point and it's the difference between 3 digits and 4 digits, or 4 digits and 5 digits, you're going to be like, okay, back in December, I shouldn't have clicked those buttons.
I think it was, wasn't it? But it didn't General miss out on top 10k last season just because of a transfer? I think he.
Oh, that'd be
I think
amazing.
I might be
Yeah.
wrong, but I thought I heard someone say
Yeah.
he finished like 10,042, and you know, he would have with one less transfer, he would have been top 10k.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just say that's true. So United, Dalot's got to be in, Rashford's got to be in, Marshall is a good pick, and I just wanted to add that because we're doing a sort of macro pod. But Ten Hag mentioned this because I watch every single interview that he does on the United website, and he's mentioned how Ten Hag Marshall's had these injury problems, and the solutions that they were working on were sort of long-term solutions so that he doesn't have these problems in the future. So that's just something that I wanted to add as a bit of info here. That's all.
Yeah, I forgot about that actually. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can go that place. Like everyone knows about Kane's ankles. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kane's missed like 3 games in 5 years for his ankles. Like
Exactly.
the ankles was years ago, and now he does the good stuff for it with the physio and what he does. So that he doesn't miss games because of his ankles, and he gets whacked on his ankle every game. And every time he goes down, everyone goes, "Cool, look at his ankles!" Like, "Oh no, he's got a problem with his ankles." And it's like, when was the last time he missed a game for his ankles? Martial could be that way. Like, he has to learn. He's still young enough for his body to work itself out, but has to start soon.
Yep.
I'm not trusting him. Not for now.
I might. Right. Chelsea then? Because I think they're a pretty interesting point of conversation. And I was looking at the data, and the data shouldn't matter because it's what Potter would have wanted at that time. But they were, for the last 6, bottom for XG and 16th worst in the league for XGC. That's what Chelsea were. But then I was thinking a little about Chelsea, and when you think about Chelsea, the reason that team functions is when their wingbacks are fit. Like, if you take away the wingbacks from that Chelsea team for the last year or two, I don't know how functional that team is. And if we have a Reece James that is fit, and it doesn't hinge too much on Chilwell's fitness, in my opinion. I think Cucurella's capable of playing wing back in that position, and if they have a couple more CBs back fit, Fofana looks like he could be back fit by the time Gameweek 17-18 comes around, then I have more belief in Chelsea than I would have had otherwise. And with Potter anyway, we saw it with Swansea, we saw it with Brighton. He takes a while to get going. He's a system-focused coach. It takes some time for his players to understand his role. He's not at a single window with his players as well. I'm willing to roll the dice, right? Because again, FPL is about putting yourself in a position to get lucky. We know there's a bit of an article that Zoff shared with me that I shared with you boys in terms of where the players are in terms of fitness when it comes to Chelsea. Reece James isn't fully training with the first team yet. He's sort of in the transition period where he's doing a little bit of work by himself and he's just getting into first team training. So we don't have a clear idea how fit he's going to be by the time Gameweek 17 comes. Potter mentioned that Fofana's a little bit behind him. Now, everybody that I've seen on YouTube has Kepa as their keeper. Kepa, currently, as per Potter, is doing rehab work. So he might not even be fit by the time Gameweek 17 comes around, and that's a big point. And, I mean, the key factor in all of this is also that Fofana is close to fitness. Because that's one more CB, and I think Chelsea had some issues playing CBs. So when I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking that, James and Chilwell are close to being fully fit, I trust the players and the managers to just stick Reece James in, maybe stick another keeper in, and then I don't know about what to do with their attackers. None of them are assets, but I have no comms going for a Reece James because in my head he's an elite FPL asset. Like a lot of people talk about. I mean, that Baker, you mentioned on the pod 2 days ago that he's a little bit of a troll, etc. But I just think that's outcome influencing us as FPL managers. Like when I'm seeing Reece James doing the things that he does, if you don't know Reece James, you're not going to be able to watch Chelsea play. Like he's that influential in the final third when Chelsea play. So if he's fit, like he's close to being locked in my team, given the fixtures that Chelsea have. You spoke, one great point that you made on your point was about the duration. It's not that tight for Chelsea early on. In fact, they have the best schedule, 17, 18, 19. So
yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it. What do you guys think?
Oh,
I-
I agree. I agree. We're ticking off numbers in the back line though,
Yeah.
and James, adding Dallo, and then we start getting tighter in them, and we are. Let's face facts. We are looking at that end of the pitch. Still, I've just mentioned 6 teams that, or 3 of the 6 worst 6 teams for averaging, XG. Chelsea average 1 XG for every 86 minutes. 1 XG for every 86 minutes. And that isn't just this season. That's not a Potter thing. That was going on, for anyone who does watch us on a Sunday night, you'd have seen us every week saying 1.1 XG, 1.0 XG, less than 1 XG for Chelsea every single week. Like, that's been going on for a good calendar year now. You can't trust the attack. Going forward, I think we're still thinking about those first 12 games or so with Chilwell and James and the madness in last season. But we should look for those signs still, because they've still got that. The big thing with Chelsea, I think, is they've still got quality players if they get them on the pitch and they work out where they need to go. You just need those signs. Like, we don't know what Potter's really been doing over these last few weeks. We don't know the vision that he's aiming for. We don't know if he's looking to move out of a 4 at the back into a back 3 and where he's going to go at. Some things have been surprising, like Koulibaly. Like, I expected him to play a lot more than he's had, and looks absolutely fine for Senegal. For me, he was like just a shoe-in to just sit alongside Thiago Silva's that left centre back, and maybe Chalobah comes in as the right centre back. But then you've got Fofana, but you've got all sorts of options they can do, which means that you should never need to play Reece James at anything other than right wing back and play 3 at the back, which also makes so much more sense because they've got bad midfield. I'm going to just say they've got bad midfield. Is sort of Liverpool linked today to Amrabat. Like, Chelsea should be all over that and offering the money as much as possible. Like, somebody like that needs it. You need to see some signs, I think, for Chelsea.
But the thing is, with Chelsea, by the time
It's Reece James, isn't it? It's Reece James.
Yeah, but I just I need to. I agree with what you're saying. There are a lot of unknowns. I just wonder if we've shifted our kind of perspective enough yet on Reece James, because we still talk about Reece James as being this absolutely elite FPL asset. Don't get me wrong. I think he's arguably the best right back in the world. He's probably the best right back in the country. But this Chelsea isn't the same Chelsea that we were watching Reece James do ridiculous things. Like, under Tuchel, it was that solid system that they played every single week, 5 at the back. They had, Rudiger. They had beastly centre backs, and Thiago Silva. Mendy was playing well. They had Kante in front of the defence with, alongside Kovacic, a fit Kante, and James and Chilwell were literally stationed in the penalty area. It was absolutely terrifying. You couldn't go without at least one of those players. And we still got that kind of fear and that perspective in our heads. And actually, look at it now, and obviously, I rate Potter, and he could easily turn it around. But the facts are, we've got a team that are playing 4 at the back. Kante is not fit. They don't have Rudiger anymore. Reece James is not being asked to take up the same positions that he was previously. Chelsea are like mid-table, defensively for underlines. They're mid-table attacking underlines. And Reece James has had a long-term injury. We saw a picture of him in training. His leg was strapped still. I saw, strapping down his leg. I mean, absolutely best case scenario, he's going to start the first game back. How does he then play, 3 games in a week straight away on injury? I mean, maybe I'm being overly cautious there. We're not looking at the same Reece James, and he's potentially injured and not getting those minutes. But then obviously, even then I say it to myself, but it's Reece James, the top of the fixture ticker, and they've got a double. But again, just to finish on that point, this is what Reece James is really is kind of tormenting me, that he's trying to get my head around it. But you have to compare it. We're not going 4 at the back, so in my mind, you have to compare him to Cancelo, Trippier, and Dallo. So what we know about Chelsea as a middling team at the moment, the back 4 with a potentially injured James, are we just going to chuck him in ahead of any of those 3 players?
The thing is, Danny, they're playing a back 4 because James and Chilwell are injured.
Do we know that?
Don't know that. We don't even know. We haven't even put in Cucurella to this.
I think we know that because he tried playing a 5 at the back, but in the first 2 or 3 games that Potter played, he tried playing a 5 at the back, and it wasn't functioning. So Potter was like, I need to do something here to make these guys function, and that's when he shifted and he put more men in midfield, and he's obsessed with Loftus-Cheek as well. So those things were happening. I think when Chilwell comes back and when James comes back, they need to they will move to a 5 at the back, is what my perception is, because Potter's used to playing that system. It's what we've seen him do at Brighton as well. It's his favorite system. So there's a little bit of a leap of faith you need to take also. And the prime reason also, outside of Reece James being Reece James, the reason you need to take this leap of faith is, I mean, their fixtures read Bournemouth at home, Forest away.
Yeah.
The double is City at home and Fulham away. Then they've got Palace at home. And then they've got 2 great fixtures for attackers, Liverpool away and Fulham at home. Like, there needs to be some element of blind faith in the quality of the players here, because look at the fixtures and an extra game. And, this is in my head as a potential position to save money, because James is still $1 million cheaper compared to Robertson, and $1.5 million, 2 million cheaper than Cancelo. And if we're looking to go premium, or if we're looking to go two premiums with a more rounded squad, then it's one position where I'm comfortable cutting corners, because James has that ceiling. But yeah, you need to be cautious with what you perceive that ceiling to be, is what we learned from this conversation, I guess.
It's a pre-season structure thing again, though, isn't it? I mean, you don't really want to go into all these unknowns in the new part of the season without a price point in defence of, a Cancelo or Trent, or whoever it may be. Because if you go in without any premium defender and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, actually, I completely forgot that City have got by far the best defence in the league and Cancelo's playing every game. And like, what was I thinking? And I just brought in Reece James, who's injured. You've got nowhere to go.
That's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah, and you've got nowhere to go. So you've got to think in terms of price points. So for me, I'm not going to sacrifice a price point in defence. So there will be probably Cancelo there over Robertson or Trent. And then again, so it does simply come down to, okay, I understand it. I'm terrified of Reece James still from a year ago, but am I going to start, you could potentially have him in your squad so that you could play him, but then you're still going to have to bench Trippier or Dalot. And I don't like the sound of either of those things at all.
Or not have Trippier.
No,
yeah.
I don't think that's an option.
You can't, exactly. It's not an option. So we're talking about things that we know aren't options. A price point in Cancelo. You have to have Trippier. Dalot looks absolutely awesome value. We've not even talked about Arsenal defence, but we're sort of saying, but we're saying, let's bring in, mid-table Chelsea right back who's been injured for 3 months.
I think Reece James. Reece
James are their good fixtures.
Yeah,
and
an extra game.
We say about the formation, and he likes that formation, but the man's given us Lamptey for about 4 games in 4 years. Like, every time we're like, yeah, no, it's not happening. Like, he's definitely not played more than 3 games in a row since he's been in that Brighton team.
But we don't compare Lamptey's fitness to
It'll just make him Veltman. It'll just make James another Veltman, where you're like, what is he?
And didn't he even bench James in like his second league game when we all thought there was no chance James was getting benched because it was only a few days rest after the Champions League, and it was like we were all like, oh yeah, that's because Potter doesn't need individuals. He just needs a system.
It's like we had a troll, and now we've got a troll manager, and now we think like, what double negative is all going to be rosy, but. I guarantee we're all going to get there by the Boxing Day. We're going to be like, it's Reece James. He's 5.8. He's not even premium. It's not even premium price. We can't justify it.
Before we started talking, in my head, I was like, yeah, James is in my team when I actually build a draft. But Danny's made me like 20% probably more cautious about the whole situation. I still probably have him in my draft, Danny. But like, you made me more cautious in terms of how I look at it. That's all.
That's why these talks are important. Like, anyone watching this, us 3 and a couple of us chat in like group chat every day for ages. But I noticed it like when we did the pod on Sunday night with Adam, is like, and we obviously chat every day. But then when you actually verbally start chat, you obviously get through so much more information and start to think about things and process decisions. It's really important. So like, mention your Discord, we've got Discord and stuff, but having things where us lot all talk FPL, I think really helps us. Really helps us get there. You can talk for a lot. Like, we've talked a lot. Like, we said about 10 different things to talk about. We've been on an hour, and I don't think we've counted anyone in.
Yeah.
So far.
This is why I'm glad, that you LR decided to do this pod early, and I know a lot of people are sort of thinking, oh, I'm not ready for FPL yet, and I was kind of thinking that as well, because it is so hard, because you're completely immersed all the
Yeah.
time. So then when you switch it off, it's very hard to get back to full immersion, and there's no in between. It's so hard to switch back on, and obviously kind of had to think about it just do this pod, but I'm actually really glad, because I'm a sort of person who I need time to let things process, and I need to keep going back to things, and otherwise I'm just going to pick a team that is not me. I'm glad we've started talking about it early, to be honest.
Yeah.
No one wants the early wild card, do we? Like, that's the thing, is this is game week 17. Like, we want to try and get a team that goes through 10, 12, 13 games. It's not like the start of this season where we were like, I've only got to get through 16 games. I'm just going to wild card after like 3-4 weeks. We don't want to be wild carded in 19 for these doubles and so forth. We want to be like perfect team and try and hold on. That looks like the best place that you get the advantage is really get this right. So I think it is so much to get through.
Yeah, and it's something we mentioned, before we got on, is also like, if you get too deep into the intricacies of the guys that have the doubles in 19, 21, and 23, it's what you guys mentioned. You're building a team for 10, 15 game weeks here. So, pay this much weightage to your fixtures, pay this much weightage to your doubles, but have a good long-term team, because you're building a team for a pretty significant period of time. So, Danny said, don't get, snook yourself on structure, is what the point that he's trying to make. And that's quite important. But, it's an important discussion to have also, because the guys at FML, FPL have mentioned this at least 5 times, and it's drilled in my head when it comes to the meta in terms of how much we want to spend at the back. And we've got maybe 2 or 3 low block managers in the league at the moment. We've seen clean sheets being down on all teams. And, Baker, I think you did a pod covering the number of goals or clean sheets these teams are getting. And there's very few teams who are not scoring goals. And that's why clean sheets are going in. So there's a little bit of thought to put into in terms of how much you're actually investing in defense as well. And especially, I think this is related to just City being very different compared to last season. So you are okay with investing more in their attack, because they're scoring 3.5 goals on average compared to a goal and a half, 2 goals last season. So what are you guys thinking about that?
You thinking taking money out of defense?
Yeah, I mean,
is this a Ben White conversation? Is this where we're going?
No, this isn't a Ben White conversation. This is a do you need to have Cancelo, Robbo, Trippier in your team conversation? Like, how much do you want to spend in your conversation? This is a conversation around Liverpool's defense, which hasn't looked like keeping a clean sheet for the longest time. Do you want to go with a Robbo? Do you want to spend 6.5 million plus on somebody and a player like that? That's the conversation I want to have. Like, he's looked great in attack, but he needs to get 4 points for a clean sheet.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that I would have Robbo in my team in game week 17. I kind of assumed it. I think I moved him in. Yeah, so because it was going up in price, so wasted a transfer there. But the more I look at it, I'm like, still not convinced. Especially when you started saying earlier about maybe they play 4-2-4, and I'm like, God, protection was bad enough as it is. Like, they just don't protect clean sheets, and if they've got 4 assets going forward, then you start ending up with, even if they just play Firmino and Darwin, as soon as they do that, you've got 2 forwards on the pitch. They steal on the bonus. Like, the defense are not getting a bonus. The Salah's getting no bonus. I mentioned earlier, but Salah's baseline's 1 for the season. Like, literally no chance. He has to brace to get in the bonus nowadays. The only chance he's getting any bonus is because they're conceding every week. But yeah, and then Cancelo, just you're not seeing it going forward, are you? The only benefit I was thinking is that Walker's playing deep into the tournament. Cancelo might be playing deep into the tournament as well. Ake and Laporte back. We might see more of them play the left side. We might see some more Cancelo right side. I do like having Cancelo when he plays the right back.
Same. With 2 extra games, I think it's one of the safest City picks out there. Right. With that ceiling as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would still go Cancelo over Robbo or Trent.
You have to picture yourself. You have to picture yourself as well in game week 20. I mean, you have to put yourself in that. Pretend you're there. Do you want to be going into a double without Cancelo when maybe I don't know what his ownership will be, but it'd be pretty high. City, I know they've got tough fixtures, but it's City, so they could clean them both. I just don't think. Again, we haven't seen enough to put us off Cancelo yet. We're speculating about this and that and changes, but we've just had a Christmas break. That's all.
I went there for like 5-6 weeks. I remember going there, and there was a period of 2-3 weeks where I was comfortable with it, and then he started doing those things again. I was like, nah, I need to get him back as well. So yeah.
What Danny said earlier about that, if you don't have the premium, you start having to cut your team up. It's a bit like the Salah conversation as well, isn't it? There are things to look at your team and think, what are the things that are going to cause me to wildcard early? Not having a premium defender is, not having Salah is as well, is one of those ones where it's hard to get to. And suddenly, and hits have hurt this season so far. So
I do think that will change, though. I do think that will change in week 17 onwards. Because what happened in the first 16 game weeks is you had 2 wildcards to build over 16 weeks and no double game weeks to worry about. There's a lot more variables in terms of what's going to happen in week 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 with the doubles in place. And generally, FPL managers tend to take hits. So I don't think it'll pinch as much as it did previously. Because you needed to have an idle team. So,
and you had limited game weeks to pay back, didn't you? Because you made a hit in 12. It was like, every week you were like, well, I've only got like 2 weeks here for this to pay. Whereas setting your team structure up and saving that wild card for later, is probably more worthwhile come the return.
I do think as well, like, sorry, Ala, just to say on that point, I feel like at this point there are so many unknowns in this restart for so many reasons. Again, we always say this, I know, but if I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as template on the restart as it was at the start of the season, because there are so many viable options. Because we know we've already got a perma captain in Haaland, we're not worrying about that. A lot, people, there's Salah, there's De Bruyne, and etc. There's Kane, and we don't need to be giving ourselves additional kind of unknowns. So when you've got a player like Salah or Cancelo, the nice thing about them, because we know so much about them, and Mitrovic is, and we can leave them there, and Haaland, because I guarantee you, we're all going to get loads of things wrong on who we go with, who that 8 million midfielder is, whether it's Maddison or Foden, whether Martinelli comes back late, whether it, who that third striker is, whether we go Darwin. We're going to really need transfers. So why give ourselves additional unknowns by taking players like Cancelo or Salah or those guys out based on we're speculating. The game's too punishing these days. It's going to be a lot of punishment after the break with variance, and it's going to feel unfair because people are going to make good picks and they're not going to bang. And I think we've just got to be a little bit more careful.
Just a word of caution before we proceed. Like, my earphones are on 10% battery. Just in case they die, I'm going to quickly get my brother's earphones and come back, but you guys can continue talking. So we'll just do that just in case that happens. But, before we move ahead from the defender conversation, how many clean sheets do you see here for Liverpool? Because Robertson is somebody who's been mentioned as a pick, but I'm talking about Villa away, Leicester at home.
They've got no home games. Leicester's the only home game in the first 4 weeks, wherever it is.
And it's still Leicester. We're good for a goal.
And Leicester always score away.
Yeah. And then they've got Brentford and Brighton away. Both good for goals. I mean, Brighton scored 3 or 4, could have scored 5 or 6 against Liverpool. And then you've got Chelsea. That's my thing with the Robertson pick being bandied about. And how many clean sheets do we see here?
And the other game is Boxing Day. And Boxing Day is absolute mayhem.
Yeah. And Simicast has been good. Simicast has been good. I can see him playing one of those first 3. I do think he's, or the early sub like that. He's done that. But regardless, like you say, clean sheets. I'm not convinced on it.
Yeah. I'm not worried too much about Robertson's expected minutes. Like, he's a beast, and when there is a big difference in Robbo's output when he's tired versus when he's not tired. So objectively speaking, he's going to be great when it comes to attacking output. I'm expecting him to get a lot of attacking returns. It's just the clean sheet thing which I'm debating against cheaper, potentially equivalent picks is what we're thinking about it. That's all.
And we're not even talking about Trent.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing, just to throw in there, we haven't touched on it yet. I don't know if we'll touch on kind of just general rest on World Cup and post World Cup and all that sort of stuff. But, just because a player's been off for the last 6 weeks or not been at the World Cup doesn't mean they're going to be really sharp when they come back. We don't know what it's going to look like. Then that doesn't mean they're match fit. It could take a lot of players 3 or 4 games to start looking sharp. I don't know. It might be that the players who've been at the World Cup are much sharper.
You get your headphones. Let's talk about Arsenal. Let's do it. I can't be accused bias if I'm the person that brings up we should talk about Arsenal.
Yeah. Danny, how do you think Gabriel Jesus being out is going to affect Arsenal?
I think Arsenal, there's so many questions, and it's a really interesting one. I think, I think Arsenal now, this is me just purely speculating, which we have to.
I think you're going to make the same point I'm going to make, but go on.
I don't know. I think that Arsenal potentially be a lot better equipped to cope without Jesus and have an Nketiah instead than they were 6 months ago. And I was wrong when I tweeted about seemingly about Richarlison at the start of this World Cup, because it was just your natural gut was they didn't look great for 40 minutes. You think Jesus just offers so much. He does so much up front and brings so many players into play. But actually, a lot of teams now, we're obviously seeing the re-emergence of number 9 in a lot of teams, and a lot of teams just they coach so well and they're positioned so well. Brazil have got basically 5 up front with Casemiro just behind. And if you look at Arsenal, Partey has been absolutely sensational, in my opinion. I can't believe he's not been talked about more. He's been awesome for them. And then you've obviously got, Xhaka looking better and better game by game, playing in the kind of left-sided 8. And then you've got Odegaard looking better and better game by game, playing on the right. Martinelli is superb. Kind of his pressing has always been superb, but he's getting better. And Saka's awesome. So it's a really tricky and interesting one for me, actually. Like, I think Nketiah I'm coming around more and more to him. I think there is a debate about, again, when it's like him versus Darwin. Obviously the benefit of Darwin is, he costs more. You don't really want to, you're going to struggle to get to Darwin if you start without him. But for me, the way I see it is that Nketiah will start, and unless he plays really badly. I mean, Nketiah has always looked really good to me. And he gets better and better every time he plays. He's an out and out finisher. He's a bit like Romario in kind of the way, obviously not as good, but that's what he looks like, and he just hits it. And I like Nketiah, and my feeling is that they'll cope, potentially better, certainly in attack without Jesus. But I do feel that if anything, if there's going to be an impact, it might be more on the defence. I don't know, without Jesus there, kind of the pressing that he does.
My problem with the Nketiah pick is like how Arsenal have operated in the last 2-3 years. As Great Cup, always 2 steps ahead in terms of how they're recruiting. Arteta's probably made calls to Edu 3 weeks ago, where we're 5 points ahead of the league. There's a real good chance that we do something this season. Get me a bloody striker. And, anyway, they're short in that department, and they do need to get a striker to rotate with Gabriel Jesus. And I'd be really surprised if they don't have somebody in place by the time 1st Jan arrives. Because I think
they wouldn't go back for Vlahovic, won't they? Because Juventus got no money. Juventus have done, is they were all over him. What is it, Fiorentina? Juventus got no money. He's the big money for them to get for it.
I just don't see them not getting a striker, whether that's a stopgap or they go for somebody younger with potential. Like, I mean, call AC Milan, get Oli Giroud back home. Like, perfect stopgap. Perfect stopgap for a team like Arsenal. But I don't see Arteta saying he's okay with just going with Nketiah. Like, one more injury there and they're in real trouble. And they're not going to be... It's very few times you're going to be 5 points ahead of City come game week 17. So that's my problem. Because come Jan, I see a replacement happening. And there's going to be a transfer getting used up there. And the Arsenal doubles in game week 23. And I'm not a big fan of their fixtures before that. Like, they've got West Ham at home. After that, they've got Brighton, Newcastle, Spurs, and United. Like, if you ask, there are 4 tough teams. So how much I'm going to invest in Arsenal game week 17 is something I've been sort of thinking about and debating internally. Because I feel like I want to see how they're going. I want to see how they operate, and then get in the right guys when the double game week comes up by the time game week 23 comes. Until then, I'm happy to maybe just get one value defender, Ben White, and then see what happens and get the right guys in. That's where I am with Arsenal at the moment.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
sorry, go on, Baker.
I was going to say those two home games, Newcastle, West Ham. Newcastle, West Ham are third and fourth behind City and Arsenal as the best two defences in the first half of the season. Like expected wise, they are very good defences. And then going to Tottenham, going to Brighton, going United, they're not easy attacks. I don't think I would want to have a lot in attack. I think most of us have Martinelli, and we have value built up in Martinelli. I can see that Nketiah comes off. Smith Rowe going to be back. Smith Rowe maybe goes to the left, and Martinelli goes up top.
And we need to have the Odegaard conversation as well.
Odegaard is elite numbers in those first 16, and I feel like we got blindsided a little bit by the Xhaka thing. Is that we saw Xhaka playing this inside left role. I mean, he's playing the same role that Neymar is playing for Brazil, like currently. But in the same token, Odegaard is playing the inside right role. He's not playing that kind of like slightly advanced JWP that he played last season. He's genuinely getting opportunities. He's right up there for XGC, just slightly behind Mitrovic for expected goal involvement this season. He's fully in. Like if I said to Adam the other day, who doesn't have Martinelli, he'd probably be the one that I would go on if I didn't have any. Whether I feel like I should lose the money on Martinelli to go to Odegaard is different question.
The slide thing. Sorry, Danny. Go on.
No, well, sorry, Ella. I just, Arsenal is such an interesting one, and it's such a hard one. But I was talking about knowns and unknowns before, and there are so many knowns at Arsenal. There is so much value there. And there's all these shiny new toys, and we're all looking elsewhere and stuff like that. But there's something special going on at Arsenal this year. They are currently the second best team in the league. I know that you could say that long term maybe Liverpool still are, but they are at the moment. They're like right up there with City for numbers. Okay, so you've got a team that are right up there. They're top of the league by 5 points, right up there with City for numbers. And you've got forwards. Let's even assume that Nketiah is going to play for the first 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 games. I would have thought so, even if it does take them a while to get someone in. I think he's probably better than maybe you think he is. But you've got forwards. Martinelli is 6.5, whatever he is now, £1 million forward who plays. Who's basically high X-Men. He's guaranteed to play every game up front for Arsenal. You've got
taking set pieces.
And taking set pieces. You've got Saka, who's guaranteed to play up front for Arsenal. Again, you might virtually 90
taking
minutes
penalties.
And taking penalties. You've got Odegaard, whose numbers are up there with those guys, and he's 6.5 as well. You've got Nketiah, a striker, whichever striker they've got is going to play every game. And then, their defense has been unbelievable, genuinely unbelievable. And so Ben White and Gabriel, again, you have to weigh up their knowns against other defenders like Reece James. I'm not thinking about really, if I'm going to have those players, I'm not thinking about benching them. When you're watching Arsenal, like at the start of the season, before the break, you could see that there's something special in terms of the clean sheets as well. The relationship that Saliba and Gabriel have got, and the high fives and Ramsdale, and how much it means to them to get clean sheets. Their defense is awesome. And again, it's that there is nowhere near as much value at any other team in the league, and in terms of and potential players that they're offering than Arsenal,
except Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, except Rashford.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the moment, obviously the thing with Martinelli is the question mark. If Brazil win the World Cup, I'm not buying into this idea about rest and stuff like that. But you'd expect him to go back to Brazil, and then it's potentially an issue because there's travel, and when you're in another country, it's a bit harder to be kind of policed. Yeah. But that aside, even with Saka, I'm probably not going to start for Saka because I'm looking at people like Foden and Maddison, but. There's still something there that's actually like Danny being silly because it's Saka. He's on penalties and he plays up front for Arsenal every game.
And he's hurt.
He's a good boy. Yeah. So he's gonna. I expect him to play straight away. So,
X Naughty is a big filter in Danny's FPL books. I realized that
He's
today.
a good boy. Everyone else calls him Star Boy. Danny's like, these are my good boys.
Yeah.
But honestly, are we being silly? Like just completely overlooking Saka? I'm not overlooking Saka. I mean, I might even have him, but
Yeah, that's why we have these
Saka not-
conversations. And there is a certain upside to Martinelli. It might not translate into points, but let's say Nketiah doesn't work, then I mean, if you're Arteta, you're thinking I'll push Martinelli up front and I'll put Smith Rowe on the left, and you could have the striker. So that's the potential upside with the whole thing. Why I wanted to discuss Odegaard is, let's say everyone's fit and we're expecting Nketiah to play. Odegaard's NPXG is better than Martinelli and Saka, slightly better. So they're pretty much at the same level. And Odegaard's assist potential is substantially higher than the other two. Then why aren't we defaulting to Odegaard over Martinelli and Saka is what I'm thinking in my head.
Sample size.
Well, I don't know about sample size because we've got a different system. I think I basically am just replaying Danny's tweet in my head about where he talked about Son being maybe a worse pick than Odegaard in a pointy way last season.
Oh, God,
that still plays in my head that in
Things
my
have changed.
brain that Odegaard is just not the pick, like not the kind of player we want in that exciting team. Maybe he is, but
Yeah, I mean, I say sample size.
Martinelli kicks fun though, doesn't he? Martinelli feels fun.
Yeah. The other two are attackers. You've got set pieces, you've got penalties. He's not my sort of player. And again, it's probably a blind spot of mine. And I was talking to, I think it was Chase on Twitter the other day. It potentially is a blind spot of mine, but you offer me Odegaard and you offer against Martinelli or Saka, and I'm going to take Martinelli and Saka. I need a lot more convincing otherwise.
Yeah, agreed. Ben White against Gabriel.
The thing
I'm
in my head.
assuming Saliba, no. 4 yellows, feels a bit.
Yeah.
5.3.
Thing that's worrying me about Ben White is Tomiyasu. And if I'm thinking about that debate, I feel like Zinchenko is clear on the left. So why not Zinchenko?
We don't know what's happened to Ben White either, do we?
Yeah, we don't know what's happening.
We don't know either.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
I'm siding on Gabriel at the moment, which again, so those transfers that you encouraged me to make, Ranil, I've brought in Andy Robertson and Ben White and Sam Greenwood, none of which I'm going to keep.
Okay. I didn't know Ben White was potentially going to have personal problems. All right, so I'll put my hand up.
Okay.
So, yeah. Right,
Martinelli and Gabriel, I think they're the two. I'm not convinced on Nketiah.
I might swerve the Arsenal defense. Just go for the right guy in 23.
Literally talked about Arsenal defense for the last 3 months to me.
I know.
You have to listen to Ben White texts for about 2 months.
Yeah, so the only one I might go for is Ben White because I have value accumulated there and I can see him as a squad pick. I mean, I don't know because I don't know what price points are like because I haven't really built a draft yet because this conversation is
like 0.1 involved in him. Like, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, I know, but it's the fixtures, right? And it's the number of players that we want from other teams as well. Like, so it's not a lock in my head at the moment, Arsenal defense, because I think Jesus made that much of an impact on that team, and he's what I feel about Arsenal. And I'm still not fully there in terms of how strong they are as mentality monsters. Where a little bit of negative momentum, and I don't know how much they'll spiral. I don't feel quite as comfortable when it comes to Arsenal. So you are making me think about them a little more than I have. And it's still early days, right? Which, I mean, where we are today and where our thoughts are going to be come 25th December is very different. But yeah, just where
the other thing just to touch on quickly, like if we're talking about Ben White in my mind as well, like me personally, when I'm setting up a team, if it's pre-season or now, I basically concentrate everything in the 11. We've got Andres Pereira, which is great. And I'd probably, I had a quick flick at the draft and he's got like Bueno, who's 3.9, but we don't actually know. Wolves are going to have a new manager, so we don't know if he's going to play. And then you've got Nico Williams at 4, who's Nico Williams. So you don't really want Nico Williams coming off your bench. And with so many unknowns, again, repeating that word, but, even if we've got Cancelo and Trippier and Dalot, for example, or Reece James, the chances of a defender missing out seem reasonably high at the start of the season. So I'm thinking about wanting a Ben White maybe for the bench, or someone who I don't mind at all coming off the bench.
Yeah,
easily would he be fourth though, couldn't he? If you've got Dalot, White, Trippier, we have James, Cancelo.
Yeah.
Right. Tough. We are in the struggle when we get there.
And then Bruno is 3.9. Like everybody was like, "Oh, he's locked in for my game."
Patterson's back. You're a big fan?
No,
4.0.
I'm not going to touch Lampard's team in defense at the moment.
Yeah, I think that.
Bournemouth got 2.5 XG versus them in that Gameweek 16 game. Incredible. But having this conversation has circled my head back to the preseason pod we did last season, where we did this entire chart. And it's a macro point that you talk about when it comes to playing defenders who are slightly attacking from shittier teams against easy opposition versus playing defenders from good teams who might not as attacking, but against decent opposition. And more often than not, the guys from the good teams win. That's why you need to have an Arsenal defender in there, because you're okay playing them against a United or a Spurs or a Chelsea even, because they're good for a clean sheet even in those games. And we might not realize that because we get swayed by the reds and the blues or the greens and the yellows on the fixture ticker. But the good teams and the good defenders win out. So cool Arsenal defender in Ben White stakes.
I think aren't Gabriel and Saliba the second and third highest scoring defenders in the game as well? But they're certainly in the top three. It's like I remember watch Arsenal with so many clean sheets. Just watching them get points every week, and Gabriel scoring from corners every week. And are we really going to start without any of them?
Yeah, Ben White's quite a bit way off from the bonus in terms of baseline compared to Saliba and Gabriel as well. I just feel like he's never, and Zinchenko once he's back. I love that shit. But we haven't talked about Maddison and Andreas.
Yeah, I think.
Oh my God,
there's so many we can talk about, but you've got less than no battery. We're an hour and a half in.
Hour and a half. But I think quickly, two teams I want to touch on. I think Fulham. All three of us agree that Andreas and Mitrovic need to be in. I'm just going to summarize that there are a lot of reasons to not own Andreas because there's so many midfielders that we like. The names that we mentioned. Outside of that, we have the 8 million midfielders. Outside of that, we have Rashford and Trossard. There's so many midfield picks we like, but Andreas is like the second or the third highest creator in the league at the moment. And if you're not getting Andreas, you're dead-ending a spot in having a dud like Greenwood. Oh, sorry about that, Baker. In your team. So that's something we need to push aside. And just two teams I want to talk about are Leicester and Newcastle, the guys that don't have Europe. And I think that's a factor that's going to come into play January, February, etc. as well. So I apologize to both of you all for Almiron bashing, first of all, because he's turned into a little bit of a monster. Is there any reason we don't have him in our team?
How have I not owned Almiron once?
I owned him in game week 4. Like I was the first man and then sold him. How can we not?
Yeah.
Genuinely, like, how can we not own him? And it's room, isn't it? It's trying to find all the room for all these players, but mate.
The case for Almiron is that not only has he turned into the best finisher in the world, outside of that, he's posting great underlying numbers too. So you're okay if one of them turns out not to be true post game week 17 and still offer incredible bang for buck he's still under 6 million, I think. And he's not going to be playing Europe. He's going to be fitter than most of these teams. There's a special thing you mentioned happening at Arsenal. I think Newcastle, if they finish in the Champions League, they're sort of accelerating their progress by 4 years. Because players that were not going to come to their club will now start coming to their club. So I think they're going to, like there's a saying in Hindi, Loha garam hai, maar de hathoda. It's like the iron's hot, like, bang it right now. Because they're seeing there in the third, there's genuine chance to come into Europe 2 or 3 years earlier than they probably expected to be. No reason to not pick him. Literally no reason to not pick him.
Yeah.
They're only going to improve, aren't they? They're only going to improve.
Yeah.
And it does look repeatable, with Almiron. It's not just the underlines, but it's just the system, isn't it? He's in that front three now, but he's playing. He's able to come inside a lot more. You've got Trippier, providing width on the right, and both Newcastle fullbacks providing width. And they press so high up the pitch, Newcastle. And Almiron's arguably, one of the best, if not the best, presser on the team. So he makes things for himself. He's in the right position. he wins the ball back in dangerous areas, and before you know it, he's got a shot 1-on-1 with the keeper, and he's burying them. And yeah, I mean, it looks repeatable for me. Maybe you see we can expect to see some kind of a dip because he has still kind of overperformed. I've not looked exactly at the numbers, but he's just been scoring every chance. But yeah, I mean, the comfort that I take in it is his price. And then, if you've got a Rashford or a Martinelli, you can move to Almiron if need be. But, Rashford with Forest at home.
Yeah. The reason is when you start taking all these names together, because it's Andreas. These are the reasons for which you don't pick Andreas. Because you want Salah, you want City midfielder, 1 or 2. You want Rashford, we've spoken about that. You want Almiron. You want said Arsenal midfielder. And then there's James Maddison.
But then I know we'll come to Maddison, I will, but to counter that point, the reason why we're not selling Andreas, I think, is because the strikers are so good, and we're not even, maybe there are fewer of them, but it's Darwin, Wilson, it's Kane, it's
Martial.
Martial.
I'm just gonna make sure that stays in there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why we're not picking a fifth midfielder at the moment. But doesn't mean it's right. Yeah.
You're never getting 4 defenders. I'm telling you now. Look at these midfield options we're talking about, and the strikers. I don't think we're ever getting a 4 defenders when we were talking earlier. But yeah, overperforming XG. He's 3.4 over his XG. So he got
Maddison.
No, Almiron.
Okay, my sounds died. Hold on.
The reason I brought him in right at the start of the season was, Danny, you pointed out to me the number of penalty box touches he was having. He was involved even before this was happening. I mean, the top overperformers on XG this season, Haaland, Maddison, Rodrigo, who we haven't talked about either, but Leeds come into some good fixtures, and his stats are just obscene. He's one you probably don't need in 17, but you would need to keep an eye. Miggy and Foden. Sure, I think they can continue to do what they do. I looked at Maddison earlier. His overall XGI is like 5.7. This is the 3rd season in a row of being over 5 above his XGI. Like, when you're good, you're good. There's nothing I don't watch about Miggy that doesn't say he's just good.
Yeah.
He doesn't look the sort of guy, does he, as well, that just like, this is a purple patch. He just looks like, yeah, let's go.
That tells me, Danny's point in terms of variance is true. There's quite a big pool of good picks available to us.
Massive.
Yeah, and
you're going to need to get really lucky. You're going to need to get really lucky because there's so many good picks. Like having Darwin or Kane, fuck, that is a tough call. Like, if you end up on the wrong side of that, you didn't pick the wrong pick. Saka or Maddison or Saka or Odegaard, Martinelli, whichever one you choose in that. There's no bad picks.
Yeah, Maddison's numbers, by the way, last 12 months, 35 games, 12 plus 17 goals and assists. So that's 32 returns in 35 games. Like, it was close to 30 returns in 35 games, so he's averaging almost a return a game. That's just...
Yeah, if you're a talisman of the team and you are so good that you continually overperform expected, how can you not return really well? That's like the big difference reason why Son's not returned so much this season is because I think it's the first time we mentioned Son in the pod, but is that really good finisher. Well, Maddison is a really good finisher, really good creator.
And you like his fixtures. Newcastle at home. All right, tough fixture, but that's at home. Then you've got teams you like playing against. You've got Liverpool away, you've got Fulham at home, and you've got Forest away. Those games scream goals. Like, you like having Maddison for those games. And, when Danny talks about having a good base, because lots of things can go wrong because we don't know what's going to happen post the World Cup. Maddison is a good known quantity to have who's going to play every game.
Yep. I really, really want to find a way to get Maddison.
Yeah.
I've gone on about him for a long time. And even before the season, I felt he was one of the best 8 million mids. I think he's probably the best 8 million mid. I mean, it's him or Saka. You can argue Saka, depends on the fixtures, but Maddison is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's up there with the best premiums in the game. And again, it's known, it's 90 minutes every game, talisman, all set pieces, really confident. He's been at the World Cup, but he's not been getting the team. Can't wait to show what he can do as soon as he gets back.
Tielemans took the pen when Vardy isn't on the pitch. Who's the penalty taker?
Tielemans, I think.
Tielemans. But she was a penalty taker, then he'd move into no-brainer territory.
And if he ends up at Newcastle, something like that.
This is what I mean. How do we only have 1 8 million mid?
Shout out to Ivan.
8 million. Well, the problem is how do you if you have Andreas Martinelli and Almiron in your team and or Rashford and one of the premiums,
Salah and a City midfielder.
Mate, you wanted De Bruyne and stuff like that's never happening.
Yeah.
We can't do all this. We're going to struggle as we get there, and we all know that first 2 game weeks, Will Zaha, Fulham, Bournemouth, he's going to score 5 goals and that's all.
But Zoff, Baker, you now have enough reason to filter Zaha out, I reckon.
Yeah. I was really pleased that neither of you mentioned him, but I can't keep staring at that Fulham home fixture.
No, I think you have enough reason.
Did he move up front due to injuries, or is he just going to play up front now? Because that is a big question. If Zaha's going to play up
it was
front,
injury. Edouard was injured.
See, that is quite a big deal because you do see a stark difference with Zaha on the left or up front as a striker. I don't think I'd want to go into game week 1 if Zaha was up front, even though he's the worst.
Well, we get a leak that week saying that Zaha's playing up front.
He's missed 5 of his last 8 penalties.
Yeah, it's insane.
Not enough spots.
That's insane.
Not enough spots.
He missed one in the friendly too, right? If I'm not mistaken, or some game that was happening.
If there's ever a player where you own them and don't want a penalty, it's Will Zaha.
Yeah. Right, I think we're enough into the pod. It's about 1 hour 40. It's been great. I mean, it felt like 15 minutes, and I don't know what I would have expected, because I was like, what if we have nothing to talk about and we wrap it up in 45 minutes and if it's terrible? And we're here 1 hour 40 minutes into it, and it just feels like our WhatsApp chats essentially. But it's much better when we're doing this on video, because I think you can go deeper into the conversation that you're having. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, boys. And any last words?
No.
Almost take a time. Come on, England.
Come on, England.
Cheers, Allah, for having us on, and come on, England, and Merry Christmas.
Yes. Good luck for the game on Saturday, boys. And we will probably see you immediately after the World Cup. Zoff and Bakar both are in hibernation at the moment. I haven't heard from them. But follow us on Twitter and you'll hear from us. Until then, see you next time, guys. Take care.
Cheers.
Nice one.